Hello everyone, and welcome to your NARSA Weekly update for the week commencing Monday the 7th of July 2025. It's Gary here again, and I hope firstly that everyone had a great Canada Day last week if you reside in Canada, and a great 4th of July if you reside in America, and maybe some people managed to do both. It's always nice to celebrate those events. It's kind of cool that they're quite close together as well. So I'm going to kind of get to it pretty quickly. Today I have some quite important news for you, especially if you're a regular listener to the NARSA Weekly Update. Today's episode is going to be the final NARSA Weekly Update in its current form, and I'll tell you why. Starting with a wee bit of a retrospective here. So I took this wonderful communication platform from an idea that Brian Campbell and I had chatted about way back in 2020. And we built it from nothing. We built it from a text message conversation where he's saying, we should probably try this. And then we jumped on the phone, kind of thought about it. And as we got it out there and continued to refine it to what you have now, I dabbled in different technologies, different formats, different delivery methods. And I also paid for the podcast for the first couple of years out of my own pocket. And I loved it from the very beginning, and I think Brian knew what he was doing when he said that in the very beginning, that it's something that we could use as a communication vehicle, and it's been tremendous. It's worked out really, really well, and it's given me an opportunity to make sure that I am on point and the communication that you are being brought is appropriate to where we're at a given point in time. And throughout this whole journey, Chris Lovett, who was our former webmaster, has been the guy in the back room doing all the production work for the majority of the pods, other than when he was out of town. And he was the guy that said, look, this is how you do it, this is how you set it up, these are the kind of do's and don'ts, and I can help with this, and go subscribe to this and do that. And so thanks a million to Chris for absolutely everything he did in terms of the technical work to get it done and dusted. So over the years, and it literally has been years, I got some wonderful ideas from you, the listeners, and I had the pleasure of bringing you interviews, a number of different interviews. I went kind of heavy on the interviews in the beginning and then pulled back a wee bit, as it was very time consuming to do the interviews. But we had Colin Stewart from the Rangers Youth Development Company, with David Edgar from Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, with Nick Thompson from the communications team at Rangers, former director Paul Murray, Tom Miller, of course, our commentator from RTV, Davy Robertson, 9 in a row legend, of course, Stevie Dukes from St. Phoenix, Arthur Newman from our golden era in the 90s, and the last one, which is kind of poignant now, was with David Holmes, in terms of talking about the book, the one voice book that he had written about his hand, and absolutely doing what he did for the Rangers Revolution and such. So very, very fortunate to get an opportunity to do that, and maybe with the benefit of hindsight, it would have been nice to have done a few more, because we were getting a bit of a groove on there. But there's only so many hours in the day and all that. So what did we do? We gave you 237. This is episode 237 today, and that's from December 2020 until now. So that's over 4.5 years we've been doing this, and including the 9 interviews, that's 246 in absolute total. So I'm going to give you some fun facts here. There's, at any given point in time, there's around 2 million podcasts that are out there in the world, basically. But the industry has a very high dropout rate. Approximately 90% of podcasts don't make it past 3 episodes. And of the podcasts that do make it past the initial 3 episodes, about 90% of them stop producing within about 20 episodes. The median age of a podcast, which is essentially the point where half of all podcasts have ended, is approximately 6 months. So we went 4 years over the median. Less than 7% of podcasts reach 100 episodes. We went to 246, folks, and we did it together. And what an incredible ride we had. And honestly, if someone had said to me back in December 2020, that we'd have done all this, we'd have had over 26,000 downloads in the process, the opportunity to interview some real heavy hitters in and around Rangers land, I honestly would have struggled to believe it. But we did it, and we did it together, and I absolutely loved every single minute of it. Here's another fun fact. I missed one Monday episode, and that was back 3 years ago in June when it was my dad's funeral, and I actually did plan to do it in the morning of that, just a very quick one, but I just couldn't quite get to getting it done at that particular time. But when I started the podcast, my dad was alive, and he was into podcasts. He had no idea. He was in newspapers and the news on the TV guy, and then he was listening to podcasts and and just provided feedback and just loved it and such. So it was a great kind of family feel to the whole thing as well. And I know that the most regular listeners were my family, of course, as well. So we did something incredible together, and I think it's a really poignant opportunity now to kind of, like, if I could say, go out on the top. Not that I'm saying this is a top podcast out there or anything like that. I would never be as conceited as that, but to figure out the best time to end it, and I'll tell you why it's the best time to end it just as we go through the show here. So what happened to get me to this particular point? For regular listeners, you'll remember that after the AGM in Kissimmee 3 weeks ago, I was, obviously had been deposed as the president and was in the past president role. And at that point, I wasn't 100% sure exactly what was going to happen with the podcast. So I was really, what would you say at the time? I was really looking for permission at the time, to proceed with the pod from the then NARSA president, Billy Ferguson. And then since that time, just 3 weeks ago, I guess, a lot of water has gone under the bridge since that point. And today I have to just think about my own core values and what I can and can't support that would still allow me to be in alignment with my own personal integrity. And I've always strived to live with integrity, and I was honoured to hold the office of the president for as long as I did. And during the entire time, I honoured the role. I took it very seriously. I never shirked what I thought was my roles and responsibilities, and I worked very, very hard to never behave in a way that would compromise both me as a person and the association at large. And I have to say, the behaviours process and the tactics that I've seen demonstrated this past 3 weeks to ascend to the position of president is nowhere near in alignment with my own personal values. And it's just as simple as that. There's no gossip, there's no bad feelings or no backdoor conversations or anything like that. I just can't support it in the way that I was hoping to. So I want to be very, very clear, though, that I have the utmost respect for democracy. I have the absolute respect for the democratic process, and we had an election at the extraordinary general meeting on Saturday, and Billy Ferguson won that election by one vote 8 days after resigning from his position. So I have to respect the will of the member clubs who voted for Billy, and I'm very grateful for the member clubs who had voted for me. So out of respect to the association and to the new executive, I really need to leave them to chart their own communication path. I wouldn't be true to myself to continue representing NARSA via this medium, because it all really genuinely started with my way to connect NARSA to you directly as the president, to let you know what was going on in our land, in our world, so that you could take away any supposition, any innuendo, any rumours or anything, and you could confidently say, I'm going to listen to the pod next week and see what Gary says, or let me listen to the last episode and see what Gary said. That was really what it is. I no longer hold the role of president, and upon deep reflection over specifically the last 3 weeks or so, I think it's important for the new president and the new executive to get to chart their own communications and connection path, and I genuinely, truly wish them well on that. I will talk a wee bit more about the EGM just when we get to the kind of convention update a wee bit later on, but that's basically where we're at. So I'm going to go through kind of most of the general process that I would typically go through. The game segment, of course, we had the friendly with the 2-2 draw, I should say, with Bruges yesterday at Ibrox, and very much a game of two halves. I've already said many times before, I don't do friendlies that much, so I just watched the 7-minute highlights that was on Rangers' YouTube channel to see what happened. But we had a Calgary member, actually Jamie Hastings, who's back home right now for unfortunately for his aunt's funeral, and he was at the game yesterday, and it was very much a game of two halves. And I think if you watched it, that seemed to be the general theme. There was a real weirdness, I guess you could say, to the first half, and then the second half we really did well to come into it and to score a late goal and not start off Russell Martin and his team's tenure with a with a defeat is a good thing. I think, it's one of these ones you want to build a wee bit of positive momentum, and it gave everybody a chance to kind of feel everybody out in competitive circumstances and situations. So it was good overall, and I think, I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming, I think I said this before, but I'm assuming that the team now would be going away to some sort of training camp somewhere where they can get properly dedicated and do their deep-rooted fitness work and such like that. And then the signings keep seeming to be coming. Right now, last week was like being in a sweetie shop and saying everybody's getting sweeties here. It was brilliant the way that the signings worked out, and I'll talk about that shortly here, just in the shout-outs. But the next competitive game that we have, of course, is against Panathinaikos at Ibrox on the 22nd of July. So what's that? That's 3 weeks? 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away, sorry. Yep, 2 weeks away. And that's 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff. Then we have the friendly against Middlesbrough, and that's going to be the 26th of July, 2 p.m. UK. So what's that? 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then the return leg qualifier in Athens on the 30th, and that's a 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff. So 2:45 p.m. and then 2 p.m. are the two kickoff times in Eastern Standard Time for the Champions League qualifiers. Hopefully they go well enough to give us an opportunity to progress and make things just a wee bit easier for us on the European front. And it's important that the team just gets off to a flyer. They gel as quickly as they possibly can and get going there. So wee bit of a worry that we don't have another game for another couple of weeks, and the game that we do have is against tough opposition in the Champions League qualifiers, but I'm sure they'll be playing closed door stuff and things like that to give themselves the best opportunity to just continue to find the legs and get the fitness and do what needs to be done to get through from there. And then, of course, the league proper kicks off, I guess that would be 3 weeks on Saturday, and that's the 2nd of August with a 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff at Motherwell. So that's going to be something to look forward to as well. So the games are coming up kind of thick and fast here, folks, and before we know it, we're going to be right in the heart of the season and doing what we do as Rangers fans, which is getting delighted and miserable and excited and angry and happy and sad all during one half of one game. And we'll see what that feels like, but I'm really looking forward to getting the competitive stuff back out. In terms of shout-outs for this week, I did want to start off with a very sombre one, unfortunately, and it was just the implications of the passing of Diogo Jota and his brother Andre during their car accident late last week there. And by all accounts, that they were looking into speed being a factor. They were in a Lamborghini that seems to have maybe been a tyre blowout or something like that, and they lost control, and I believe the car might have caught fire as well, and just an absolutely horrific way to go. And I think they were driving because he had a lung procedure, so they were saying, it's probably best not to fly for a certain amount of time. So he was basically going on to one destination to essentially make his way back to Liverpool for their pre-season tour, and just like, when you it's bad enough experiencing death in any sort of facet of life, but when it comes to someone who's in their prime, I mean, he just won the Premier League, he just won the Nations League with Portugal, just got married 11 days before the accident, and then you've got the parents have lost 2 sons, and his kids, he had 3 kids with his wife, and they've lost their dad and uncle, and the wife has lost her husband, of course. It's just absolutely awful. And when you see some of the things online in terms of the outpourings of affection and grief and such, you can tell how well thought of this particular guy is, and of course, I mean, it's devastating for everyone involved. And then there's a practicality part to it as well, where Liverpool have to replace that. And, that's a very difficult resource. He was a very, very key member of their squad and all the successes that they had enjoyed over the last few years. So that was just awful, absolutely awful on every single part. So sincere condolences from everyone at NARSA to Diogo's wife, of course, kids, family, and friends. They're just absolutely awful. Speaking of Liverpool, it was also confirmed last week that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has joined. I believe he's actually the assistant manager. He's joined Arne Slot's team there, and very, very interesting move for him to make, and I'll be interested to see how he does. Obviously very well thought of to get a job like that. I mean, many football coaches in the entire world, in fact almost everyone I would imagine, would love the second top job at Liverpool. Liverpool Football Club. So great to see him back in there. You know, always a great guy. He gave us the memories, of course, of the trip to Seville in the Scottish Cup not long after, and it just didn't work out. You know, he wasn't going to do for us, unfortunately. But good to see that his career is taking a wee bit of an upturn in terms of trajectory as we go forward. So I'm going to also mention this week Billy McIlveen. I did mention him last week. He had been at the convention, had an opportunity to meet him and his friends and family group and lovely people. And he's still in hospital right now and has experienced some more medical complications and challenges that have kind of prolonged his stay there. I'm not going to go into what those are because I'm not a doctor and I don't really know if I could do it justice. Anyway, but the reason I mention it again for this week is one, of course, to wish him a speedy recovery and to get him the best opportunity to get himself home. But it's also his birthday, so he's had to spend his birthday in the hospital too. So happy birthday, Billy! I'm so sorry this is happening to you. As I said last week, I'm wishing you nothing but a speedy recovery, and I definitely hope to see you at our next convention, and please do take care of yourself and get yourself better so that you can get yourself home before all these games start. You don't want to be watching them on an iPad or a tablet of some description in the hospital bed, I am absolutely sure. And talking about signings, like I did a wee bit earlier there, we had Thilo Asgard. It sounds like something from one of these Marvel movies, to be honest, but he became our fifth arrival of the summer transfer window. I think I was actually talking last week about the fact that it was kind of getting a bit quiet. It wasn't going super quick, and then we had two in one day, and then everything just went absolutely brilliant for us in the way that we were hoping it was going to. So we've now got five. He's the fifth arrival, of course. Lyle Cameron, Max Aarons, Joe Rothwell and Emmanuel Fernandez as well. We didn't get to see all of them. I think there was only two of them that were involved in the friendly yesterday, but great to see us having the opportunity to start to see the type and style of player that Russell Martin and his back team staff are recruiting and what he's actually going to do with them as we go forward as well. So it's starting to take shape there. It was good. It was a very active week last week, and it's nice to see, and just nice to see some positivity coming from the club and some of the nice things that they're saying. And one thing I do really like is you can tell the kind of, what would you say, the team ethos, because every time a new player comes in, the player gets centre stage to say, this is how it came about, this is how excited I am to be here, this is what I'm hoping to achieve when I get here. And then you have Russell Martin as the manager, head coach, as we say. And then you also have our sporting director, Kevin Thelwell, I think it is. He says some stuff as well. So you just get that feel that everybody's working together. Everybody's working in the same direction. Everybody's rowing in the same direction, sort of thing. So great to see. You know, we obviously won't get to see them in competitive action for a couple of weeks now, but hopefully they are the right type and style of player that's going to give us the early success that we need as we embark upon this European campaign before the domestic season starts. I was on Facebook yesterday and very, very briefly, and I did see a post that former Orange County Rangers Supporters Club member Barry Bryson and his lovely wife Paula welcomed a new blue nose to the Rangers family with the birth of their baby boy Lachlan Sean Robert Bryson, and they welcomed him to the world on the 1st of July, and I believe now they are home and very well settled. They are great. I recall them meeting at the Vancouver convention back in 2016, and I was walking up the road and Barry came out of a pub and he says, I think I'm in love, man. I think I'm in love. And as it turns out, he was absolutely right. And they have subsequently got married, moved down to Florida, I believe, somewhere like that. Forgive me if that's not true. But they're doing absolutely great, and it's so lovely to see young Lachlan as part of the Rangers family now. Just a quick reminder of the cultural afternoon this coming Saturday, the 12th of July at Toronto Midtown Rangers Supporters Club. I'll leave the Facebook link on the show notes for this week, and that's with the Blair Memorial Flute Band from Omagh in Northern Ireland, and all the details will be on the Facebook link there. And one last time here, the Melbourne City Loyal Rangers Supporters Club Culture Weekend is the 21st to 22nd of November 2025. Ian Ferguson, Gary Stevens, Stuart Monroe all going, boat cruise, singer, gala dinner, lots of fun and hilarity. It's going to be an absolutely great time. In terms of the convention update, just as I think I mentioned this last week, we're still tidying up the financials from the convention, getting the final bills and such from mostly the hotel now we're waiting on. and hopefully we'll get that kind of soon. And then that one gets moving and gets organised. I did say that I was going to have an interview with my good friend Colin Wolf, Ferguson Bowman from Orlando Rangers Supporters Club, and what I actually did was I recorded that prior to this, so I'm going to put that one out separately. I wasn't sure if it was going to be like 10 or 15 minutes. It ended up going on for over an hour, where he basically just walked through his experience. And if you're ever thinking of, or even, I tell you what, if you're ever wondering what goes into organising a convention from a host perspective, this would be an absolutely enlightening part of that. If you're ever thinking about maybe we should put our hand up and have the honour and privilege of being a host destination club for a future convention, you definitely want to listen to this one to give yourself an idea of what it looks like. In the background, I described it on the interview there as being a duck on the water, and things look very serene and chilled and relaxed over the top of the water, and underneath the water the legs are frantically kicking. That's kind of what it's like managing a convention, and it was good. So the reason I recorded that first, and then this one, if it was shorter, I was going to just put it into this segment here, and then just come back and join you afterwards. But it's longer, so it deserves to go out. So although this is the last NARSA Weekly update, it's not the last NARSA podcast that you will receive either. So we did have the EGM on Saturday, as I mentioned. I've been mentioning that from last week there, and I have to admit it was not enjoyable at all. It was very disruptive from basically the start, with certain individuals just basically hell-bent on getting their voice heard over everyone else's voices, and getting their own way, mostly at the expense of human politeness and meeting etiquette and meeting protocol and such. And I want to put it on record here, I will definitely not miss that. I won't miss that at all, that type and style of behaviour, trying to be professional and keep things moving and be respectful and respect other people's time and effort and energies that they're trying to put into the meeting at the same time. So a couple of bad apples made it less of an experience for everyone else that were on there. And we had, as I mentioned earlier, we had the vote. The vote was only specific for the president role. I put myself back up, Billy did too, and there was a whole bunch of hullabaloo about whether the past president can run for president, and but everybody was okay with the guy who resigned as president coming back in as president, so just pick the rules to suit yourself there. Why don't you? Right you are then. But the new executive is me as past president, so that's kind of status quo now, that as it turns out from a couple of weeks back. President is Billy Ferguson from Windsor Rangers Supporters Club, the Vice President Gary Fleming from Toronto Central. We did elect a new treasurer, and that's Andy Burnett from Toronto Midtown, so he finally got in. You might remember, if you were at the AGM in Toronto, that he put his name up for treasurer there and was beaten in an election there, so he gets an opportunity to come on and serve there, which is great. The secretary is Beth Reid from Bayou City Loyal. The broadcast RTV director is Allan McWatt from Orange County Rangers Supporters Club, and the marketing and sponsorship director is Ian Dinsmore from Chicago Rangers Supporters Club as well. As Billy won the election, then Lorraine Spence from London Rangers Supporters Club resigned her position as communications director, and it just wasn't going to work out in terms of working dynamics with Billy there. So we now have two open positions, the convention director and the communications director. So if you have any designs on those positions, I said it at the EGM, I said it at the AGM mid last month, I should say now, that it's better if you have skills and passions in that particular area. If you don't, and you're just coming in saying, how hard can it be, and I'll do my best, that makes things a wee bit more difficult, to be perfectly honest. But if you have experience in organising and managing events, and you would like to do that on an international stage with NARSA, please do get in touch with Billy Ferguson, and he will give you all the information you need. And the same on the communications front. The communication one is a wee bit more, I would say, important, because basically everything we're doing, this included in terms of the podcast, is all kind of quarterbacked, or should be quarterbacked, by the communication director. Our social media presence, what we do and don't put out, the distribution or recording, production and distribution of the podcast, our website, and anytime anyone's getting in touch with us, those sorts of things, and really looking out for what's happening in the world. Where are people navigating towards? What are they staying away from? What's going to land? What's not going to land? And really investing And that's the key part of the comms director role. So as I say, if you have interest in that, please do get in touch, and we'll certainly have a conversation and take it from there. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of poignant that was my last meeting in charge of a NARSA meeting, and what a doozy to go out on. But congratulations, genuinely, and thank you to everyone who stepped up, to the new folks that stepped up, and not just the new folks on the weekend there, of course, at the AGM as well. I truly hope you enjoy your journey as much as I have enjoyed mine with the NARSA executive. Very special mentions again to outgoing Secretary Sandra Hawthorne, outgoing Treasurer Alec Grant, outgoing Communications Director, of course, Lorraine Spence as well, and to all the previous exec members who took their time to help support NARSA and their membership and Rangers Football Club. You genuinely, truly have my deepest heartfelt gratitude for the time and effort that you've put in to everything that we are today. Okay. So a saying that I've heard lots and lots and lots over the last, what would that be, the last 3+ weeks, last 4 weeks or so, has been Gary and Brian, Gary and Brian, Brian and Gary, Gary and Brian, Brian and Gary, about my brother in arms, Brian Campbell, of course, President of Orange County Rangers Supporters Club and former VP of NARSA too, and other roles, of course. And this was really all in reference to the working relationship and the progressive way that we try to do things, and quite frankly, the shit we managed to get done over the years. And I need to express truly how much our working relationship has meant to me personally and professionally, and all the good things that you see and experience, see from and experience with NARSA have Brian's fingerprints all over them. Everything that you enjoy today, he had some hand in it, whether it was his original idea, like this podcast was, or the way that we went to do things, or if you were in Vegas and you got a medallion, and that was because Brian Campbell phoned up UPS or DHL and said, release these from customs, they have no monetary value for anyone. Like, this is all the stuff that got done in the background. And Brian's he's never one to back down, never one to shy away from giving me a kick up the arse when I needed it, quite honestly, and then by the same token pick me up when I was down, and roll his sleeves up and get work done, and just provide absolute encouragement in abundance. And I wouldn't have had anywhere near the same experience or successes that I had with the NARSA executive without him, quite frankly. And I'm so glad that our paths crossed and our stars aligned when they did. He really is genuinely one in a million. You know that he's a good friend of mine, but I'm talking more from how we managed to bond and gel and deliver on the NARSA front. So I have to say thanks a million to Gaynor for letting me borrow Brian more than I should have. Quite honestly, to Graham Campbell, Brian's brother and business partner, for not throttling me when I was draining Brian's time when he really should have been working on the business. To Brian and Gaynor's kids, Greg and Stella, for keeping us all kind of aligned on what's truly important in terms of family. And to Big Brian, Brian's dad, and the lovely Marie, Brian's mum, for basically holding all the family together. They've genuinely, folks, been like a second family to me, and you're all truly, truly wonderful people, and I absolutely love every single one of you. Thank you very, very, very much for everything. In terms of communication for this week, I don't know if there's a Jers guide, because I just realised right now that I didn't actually check it out before I was recording today, but I'll take this opportunity one last time to let you know, remind you again about the Rangers Ladies Lunch presented by Molten Brown on Friday the 22nd of August. You can go to the New Edmiston, or the Edmiston House website, or the Rangers website, and just kind of basically click a search, and if you're interested in that, Friday the 22nd of August, and it's always a good time there. And 5 Stars have the event, An Evening with Barry Ferguson, Allan McGregor, Neil McCann and Billy Dodds, on Saturday the 3rd of June. So just as you're wiping away all the hangover cobwebs from New Year, you'll get an opportunity to go and see what's happening. What happened, what transpired during his tenure, or their tenure, I should say, with the club, and what happened subsequently, and then how they're feeling about how the new regime at the club are doing. And I mean the regime in terms of the leadership of the club, of course, with their new owners and chairman and vice chairman, and with the team, Russell Martin and his team on the park as well. So that's at the Doubletree by Hilton, Glasgow Central. Tickets £80 for regular tickets, $120 for the VIP experience. I haven't heard if it's sold out or not, so I'm not 100% sure about that, to be honest. Okay, that will do it for this podcast, my friends. You know what I did actually? I did a wee bit of practice yesterday and it was very, very emotional. I have to say, I couldn't actually get through the segment that I wanted to get through with Brian, or for Brian, and my thanks to him for it was emotional. I've invested a lot of time in this. I love this, and I'm glad I did some practice. Normally I don't, and you can probably tell most of the time. But I just wanted to make sure this was right, and I wanted to make sure that I got to say what I needed to say. So as always, this is where I take the opportunity to thank you very, very, very much for taking the time to listen. And please do share this, even just this one episode. If I've said this to you once, I've said it 237 times. Please do share it with someone that you think might enjoy it, and do it because there's a wee bit of a difference on this particular one. Of course, it's a little bit of the end of an era for me. Anyway, thank you for listening. Truly, thank you for sharing it. Thank you for correcting me when I got things wrong, which was a lot more often than I would like to experienced. And thank you for indulging the various segments that weren't exactly NARSA related and weren't exactly maybe even Rangers related for that fact. It was just some certain things came up that I thought were interesting, I thought would be worthy of sharing. To my beautiful baby boy Leo, he's only ever known, he's 16, I've been on the NARSA executive now for 13 years. He doesn't know any different, and I did ask permission from him to rerun as president, and he said, yeah, go ahead. I mean, he's busier now, with his car and his girlfriend and his job and his passions and his hobbies and such. So it's a wee bit, if this was to happen, it would have been better to happen 10 years ago. Oh well. But he's been such a support to me, and he's given me the grace and the space to be able to do that. He's the love of my life, and I think you all know that if you've listened, and genuinely. And to my love, Erin, of course, for all the support for me through this journey. Again, Erin's only ever known me doing this type of stuff, not just a podcast, but NARSA stuff in general, and has been incredibly supportive. You didn't have to do that, Erin, and I believe NARSA is in a better place and space because of your sacrifices and the love and support that both Leo and Erin have given to me. So I can't thank you enough, and I hope you know how much I love you. It wasn't always easy for you. I know it wasn't. And from the bottom of my heart, I genuinely can't wait to spend more time with you and start to build what our new life looks like as we go. The same goes for the Carey clan, the Debbie, Andy, Chloe and Callum, who've given me absolutely unwavering support, way more support than I've actually deserved, to be perfectly honest with you, but I love you all. I'm very, very grateful for each and every one of you. And you might remember from the podcast a few weeks ago, and if you didn't listen to it, maybe you go back and listen to it, immediately after the AGM down in Florida, and I said the biggest thing that I was really disappointed about was that no one in my family or friends, got to, well, my friends were there, but nobody in my family got to experience my final hurrah as president, because I didn't know that was coming. We had an opportunity. They were on that ill-fated meeting at the weekend, and we actually, by fluke, we had a family event together afterwards, so we had a good chance to just laugh at the absurdity of some of it, and basically bond together and move forward from there. So I'm so grateful for every single one of you, for all your support and everything that you did. And I got a surprise from the Careys and the Campbells after that, with the opportunity to go and see Oasis down in LA, that's in early September. It's my weekend with Leo. I had to double check it was okay with him. He said it was okay. We've already got the flights booked, and we are counting the days to go and get to have that experience with all of my favourite people. Just a wee bit of a pity Leo can't be there, but that can't be helped for this particular weekend. To all my friends at Rangers Supporters Club of Calgary, what a journey we've all been on. Thank you very much for everything. I can't wait to see you all when the season proper starts. And do you know what, actually, I want to take this opportunity, speaking of the Rangers Supporters Club of Calgary, I want to thank specifically Ross Irwin and Kyle Taylor and Callum, my nephew, for suggesting back in the day, and this must have been 2016, 2017, maybe something like that, where they suggested that we get a guy called David Edgar from this podcast called Heart and Hand to come over and be part of our convention. I didn't even know really truly at the time, folks, what podcasting was, and I was like, what? What's that? So Andy got in touch with him through social media, Andy Carey that is, and then we had a conversation with him, David, and that, who knew at the time that was going to be the beginning of something particularly poignant in terms of friendship, of course, but particularly poignant for NARSA, because as you know, David has been our MC for the last number of years here, and as I said at my speech and kissing me there, I genuinely believe he's just the best in the business. He is Rangers through and through, the consummate professional, got time for everyone and does an absolutely fantastic job. So thank you very much to my good friend David for everything that he did too. Okay, guys, I think it's probably time to get this wrapped up. So what's next for me? You might be wondering. If you're not, you can probably just stop listening at this particular point and I wouldn't be offended. I wouldn't even know, to be perfectly honest with you. But what's next for me? Honestly, truly, I don't know, folks. I love podcasting. I do it on my own business side. If you haven't seen my YouTube channel, go to Gary Gillan Coaching on YouTube and subscribe there if you don't mind. I might get over 100 subscribers and I think that would be me viral then, wouldn't it? Something like that. But I do a wee daily tidbit on self-education, self-development each day. I love that sort of stuff. But I do, anyway, back to the podcasting, I do love podcasting and I do love bringing you content that's hopefully been worth tuning into. So I don't know, am I done Rangers podcasting? Maybe not. I truly have to just take a wee bit of a break and see what that feels like. I do have an idea of an episode dedicated to the work that we accomplished during my tenure, and I think I'll maybe gather my thoughts on that. Maybe actually chat to Brian. I think that would be a good one for both of us to do, because I started a list a few weeks back after the AGM to just think about the things, because in the moment sometimes you kind of forget, and I'll do some thinking, some research, and see if that's worthy for your ears, and if need be, I can launch that on my own podcast platform anyway. But we could probably do it through the NARSA one too. We'll see what that looks like. But for now, I'm going to take a breather. I'm going to spend some time with my loved ones, and then I'm going to see what's next. If you have any comments, any suggestions, any complaints, the complaints can go to Billy, of course, but if you have anything nice to say, you're more than welcome to get in touch with me at rangersscc@hotmail.com. That's 2 S's and 2 C's. And just tell me what you think. If you think there's mileage in doing something else very similar to this or whatever, I'm happy to do that. As I explained to the NARSA executive today, the logistics of me being able to represent NARSA the way that I did before would be too great, and it would be a lesser quality product, honestly, folks, that you would get from that, for having to chase up other people and then essentially just being the mouthpiece but not the person that really truly knows and understands the inner workings and such. So I want to just kind of, as I've mentioned earlier, go out somewhat on the top when I choose to go out, rather than just completely having a drop off in listeners because it's not a quality offering anymore. So maybe all that to say, consider this not as goodbye, but I will see you later. Okay, folks, for one last time, I'm going to give this a go. I'll finish it, I promise. On the NARSA Weekly Update, I want to finish by saying from me to you, God bless you for listening. God bless you for your support. God bless NARSA. God bless the King, of course. And absolutely, God bless Rangers Football Club. Follow.